Hi everyone, my name is Steve Gordon and welcome to my course Configuration and Options in ASP.NET Core 6. I'm a Microsoft MVP, senior engineer and a passionate member of the .NET community. Fun fact, configuration is a fundamental concept for all but the most basic .NET and ASP.NET Core applications. This course will get you fully up to speed on configuration concepts, and afterwards you'll be able to apply these skills to build robust ASP.NET Core and .NET applications. Some of the major topics that we'll cover include understanding where to use configuration and how to define it with JSON files, learning how to access configuration at runtime to control the behavior of your applications, learning about the options pattern, which supports strongly typed access to your configuration across your application via dependency injection, and learning about other configuration providers, including those which help secure your application's secrets and sensitive configuration keys. By the end of this course, you'll have a complete understanding of the capabilities of the Microsoft configuration and options libraries. You'll be able to apply this knowledge in your .NET and ASP.NET Core applications to take full advantage of secure configuration. Before beginning the course, you should be broadly familiar with general .NET and ASP.NET Core concepts and have some experience in building ASP.NET Core applications. From here, continue your learning by diving into .NET fundamentals with courses on dependency injection, logging, and authentication. I hope you'll join me on this journey to learn about these important concepts with the Configuration and Options in ASP.NET Core 6 course here at Pluralsight. Hello and welcome to Configuration and Options in ASP.NET Core 6. I'm Steve Gordon, and in this course I'll show you how to master configuration within ASP.NET Core applications. Since you've decided to view this course, I'm sure you already know that configuration is essential to building flexible applications. I'll focus on how you can quickly begin leveraging the built-in configuration and options pattern to address some real-world requirements in the applications you're building today. My goal is to help you become productive as quickly as possible, and so with that, let's dive straight into this first module. This course was created using ASP.NET Core 6. ASP.NET Core 6 was released alongside .NET 6 and C# 10. When I work with ASP.NET Core, I use Visual Studio, an integrated development environment. I'm using the latest Visual Studio 2022 release for this recording, which supports .NET 6 and ASP.NET Core 6. A code editor such as the latest version of VS Code is also sufficient. All code and samples will work perfectly fine if you use the same version I'm using. In November 2022, Microsoft released .NET 7 and C# 11. All samples in this course will work fine with .NET 7 and ASP.NET Core 7 as well. It's rare for Microsoft to introduce breaking changes in future releases of ASP.NET Core, which is good news even if you're watching this course far in the future. The content and demos will generally remain applicable to future ASP.NET Core versions, and nearly everything we'll cover also applies to previous versions of ASP.NET Core as well. You can also use an earlier version of Visual Studio as long as it supports your .NET SDK version. Microsoft plan to release a new version of .NET and ASP.NET Core every year. Configuration is a stable and mature concept, and it's not expected to evolve significantly. Microsoft maintains strong backward compatibility between their releases, so any changes will likely be additive and non-breaking. These facts mean that you should be able to apply most of the code and techniques from this course regardless of which version of ASP.NET Core you're using. In this module, you'll learn how configuration is structured in ASP.NET Core applications. We'll define some configuration values inside a JSON file, which will be loaded when our application starts. We'll then look at how we can access configuration values at runtime, both by their key and by accessing whole sections of configuration in one go. We'll explore how to bind the configuration to strongly typed objects, and we'll see how the JSON configuration values can be overridden for different environments. Later in this course, we'll build upon these foundations by learning about applying the options pattern in ASP.NET Core applications, and how to work with configuration providers. This course includes topics specifically designed to teach the practical application of configuration and options in ASP.NET Core. You'll require some prior experience with .NET and ASP.NET Core to follow along with the demos. If you're brand new to ASP.NET Core, you may want to begin with a Getting Started course to learn about the core concepts before tackling this course. We'll be coding in C# during this course, so you'll require some C# experience to understand the sample application code. If you'd like to follow along, you can download the code from the exercise files for this course. The sample solution is designed for ASP.NET Core 6, so you'll need the latest .NET 6 or later SDK installed to build the solution. You can download this from the Microsoft website dot.net. I'll be using Visual Studio 2022 to develop the solution, but you're free to use whichever IDE or editor you prefer, as long as it supports .NET 6. I'm very excited to teach you about using configuration and options in ASP.NET Core, so let's get started on our journey. When designing applications, there are often elements of the functionality or behavior we wish to control at runtime. In .NET and ASP.NET Core applications, configuration is the mechanism by which we define and access settings for our application. Application configuration provides the initial settings for an application which are loaded at startup. We may need to change these settings over time, and they may differ between operational environments such as in development and in production. Sometimes these settings may be updated even whilst an application is running. We want to change these settings without having to make source code changes, which would require the recompilation of an application. With configuration, we define the configuration, which may come from one or many sources. At runtime, we access the configuration values and use them to control the application's behavior. ASP.NET Core ships with a built-in and extensible configuration system, which should meet the requirements of most applications. It is one of the core shared components available in the framework. A complementary design pattern called the Options pattern is also built in, and we'll see how that can be utilized in the module called Getting Started with the Options pattern. Configuration is available as a set of NuGet packages with the types defined under the Microsoft.extensions.configuration namespace. This package is referenced by default in ASP.NET Core applications when using the Web SDK. The configuration extension libraries can also be consumed in other types of .NET applications, such as console applications, and they're included in the worker service templates from .NET Core 3.0 onwards. Configuration for an application is defined as a set of key-value pairs. The key is used to identify the configuration entry so that it can be accessed at runtime, and the value holds the data which will be used to control the application. Values are often one of three main types. String values are used to provide specific values used by components of your application. For example, you may use a string value to provide the URL or hostname for a remote service to which your application will connect. Boolean values are used like a switch to enable or disable functionality. Integer values are used to configure numerical settings such as the number of retries to apply to an operation, for example. Each configuration entry will have a unique key which can be used to access a configured value at runtime. The configuration system in ASP.NET Core supports the concept of a hierarchical organization for configuration values. This allows configuration to be logically grouped into sections containing related configuration values. To support this hierarchy, the keys for configuration values contain information about their position within the hierarchy. This is achieved by flattening the sections and using a colon separator to distinguish the sections under which a value is located. An advantage of this approach is that the risk of conflicting keys is then reduced. As long as a key is unique within its own section, it will not conflict with similarly named keys from other sections. Sections can even be nested to support multiple levels for your configuration. I think that's enough theory for now. I'm sure you're keen to get onto some practical demos. We'll see all of these details in action as we progress through the course. During this course, I'll use a tennis club website and online court booking system to demonstrate the use of configuration and options. We won't cover ASP.NET Core fundamentals in this course. We'll be focusing on specific topics related to configuration and options. The final version of the tennis booking web application includes functionality for its members to book courts at the club. A test member user exists for the application with a very insecure password set as the word password. The member-facing website uses an ASP.NET Core Razor Pages programming model. Club administrators can manage the court bookings for the tennis club using the administrator site. The password is the same as the member user account. The administration area of the website is built using a traditional MVC approach. Administrators can view and cancel court bookings, as well as view the upcoming maintenance schedule. To follow along, first download the exercise files and unzip them. Navigate to the Before folder for the module you're viewing. You can double-click the solution file to open the Visual Studio IDE if you're a Visual Studio user. Of course, you can use a different IDE or editor if you prefer. At the start of this course, the solution in the exercise files includes several projects under the source folder. The most important project is the ASP.NET Core website project named Tennis Bookings. This project is where most of our development and implementation of configuration features will take place. Under the external folder, two Web API projects represent external services our application communicates with in order to provide its functionality. There is a single unit test project within this test solution folder with some limited tests for classes within the tennis booking web application, which we'll come to later. We can run and debug the web application directly from Visual Studio. To achieve that, we should ensure that the correct projects are started during debugging. Because our application depends on the Web API projects, these need to be running as well as the main tennis booking website. Let's right-click on the solution and choose Set Startup Projects. We can configure Visual Studio to launch multiple startup projects from this settings menu. We'll start both API projects without debugging them, as we're not going to step into their code while running the application. Tennis Bookings is our web application that we will want to debug, so we'll set the action to start for that project. We can accept these settings by clicking OK. Now, when we press F5 or choose to start debugging from the menu, Visual Studio launches the free projects and begins debugging the tennis booking project. Visual Studio by default will open a browser window to the appropriate local port for the tennis booking website. Should you be using an editor such as Visual Studio Code, you can use its debugging tooling or start running the application directly from the command line using the .NET Run command. Remember, you'll need to run both API projects and the tennis booking application. We can launch each of these in turn using the .NET Run command within their project directory. With the API started, we can then launch the tennis booking application. Once the application starts up, you will see console messages that the host is listening on local ports, and you may navigate to those URLs to view the running website. I'll control-click on the HTTPS URL here to open a browser to the URL.